Careful. Don't flinch yet. This is the part where everyone else thinks they're watching a tragedy, and you already know you're watching a trap close. You didn't scream. You didn't posture. You didn't try to look powerful. You did something far more dangerous. You let them believe you were wounded, weak, cornered. You played the victim so clean it felt holy, so convincing it triggered instincts older than language. And predators? Predators can't resist a clean signal of weakness. It lights up something rotten inside them. It tells them it's safe to come out. That's the paradox they never saw. While they were congratulating themselves for seeing through you, you were letting them step forward into daylight. You weren't hiding. You were baiting. You understood something most people never learn. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it limps. Sometimes it bleeds on purpose. You let them talk. You let them speculate. You let them explain you. And the moment they thought the room belonged to them, that's when they showed their teeth. Not at you, at each other, at the system, at the lie they'd been pretending to be. You didn't expose them. They exposed themselves, trying to dominate someone they thought couldn't fight back. See, saints don't scare predators. Victims do. Because predators don't attack strength. They attack silence. And you weaponized silence like a professional. You made stillness feel like consent. You made patience feel like surrender. And in that space, every manipulator, every opportunist, every masked monster stepped forward, thinking it was their moment. That's the angel-demon split right there. You looked harmless. Inside, you were taking notes. You let them escalate. You let them overplay. You let them say the quiet parts out loud. And the more they pushed, the clearer it became who needed blood to feel alive. They thought you were shrinking. You were sharpening. That's why it worked. That's why it hit different. You didn't accuse. You didn't defend. You didn't expose. You waited. You let pressure do the job for you. Pressure reveals truth the way fire reveals gold. And under that heat, they cracked. You didn't have to raise your voice. Their behavior did the screaming. Understand this. Predators are addicted to control. Take away resistance and they lose discipline. They start revealing patterns. Language shifts. Masks slip. They get sloppy. They show you exactly who they are because they think you're too broken to notice. But pain didn't break you. Pain trained you. You learned how to stand in the crossfire without flinching, how to let false narratives orbit you while you remained unreadable, how to turn vulnerability into a mirror so sharp it cut the people staring into it. That's not weakness. That's advanced warfare. You became the contradiction they couldn't compute. Calm but dangerous, wounded but alert, quiet but lethal, a saint on the surface, a psychopath in strategy, an angel in posture, a demon in timing. And timing is everything, because now nobody can unsee what happened. They watched you get targeted, and somehow the same names kept surfacing, the same behaviors, the same hunger, the same lack of restraint. Funny how every accusation led back to the same mouths. Funny how the ones screaming loudest looked the worst when the dust settled. That's the beauty of unpredictability. You didn't follow the script. You didn't fight like they expected. You didn't defend your image. You let their actions rewrite it for you. While they were hunting a victim, you were mapping a food chain. And here's the part that really messes with them. You didn't even look satisfied. No victory lap. No smug grin. Just that quiet aftermath, where everyone suddenly realizes the story changed, and nobody knows when. They'll tell themselves it was an accident, that they went too far, that circumstances exposed them, but deep down, something colder, is crawling up their spine. They know. They felt it. They stepped into a scenario designed by someone who understands human darkness better than they do. You didn't become dangerous overnight. You became dangerous the moment you stopped needing to be believed. That's evolution through pain. That's what happens when betrayal sharpens perception instead of shattering it. You don't lash out anymore. You let gravity work. You let people fall into themselves. And now the room feels different. Conversations pause when you enter. Eyes linger too long. Not because they fear you'll attack, but because they don't know what you see. They don't know how much you already understand about them. And uncertainty? Uncertainty is terror to predators. You're no longer the victim in their story. You're the variable they can't control, the anomaly that exposes patterns just by existing, the quiet presence that makes masks uncomfortable to wear. Remember this: anyone can scream monster. It takes a tactician to let monsters introduce themselves. You didn't survive by being loud. You survived by being precise. And now that they've been seen, truly seen, there's no putting that darkness back in the cage. Stay calm. Stay unreadable. Let them wonder. You already won the moment they showed you who they were. And here's the part nobody warns them about: the aftermath, the silence after exposure, the moment when the air changes and nobody knows how to breathe the same way again. Because once predators are revealed, they don't disappear. They panic. They start revising history in real time, softening their words, rewriting motives. Suddenly they were misunderstood, provoked, just reacting. Watch how fast the fangs retract when the spotlight hits. Watch how quickly confidence turns into defensiveness. That's not remorse. That's fear of being seen without the costume. And you don't chase closure. You don't demand apologies. You don't even acknowledge the shift. That's what drives them insane. Because predators survive on reaction, on emotional feedback, on knowing they still matter to the nervous system of their prey. But you cut that supply. You became still in a way that feels unnatural to them. Not frozen, settled. Like someone who already made peace with the outcome. Like someone who already ran the ending in their head and didn't flinch. They keep replaying moments, trying to find where they slipped, where they overplayed, where they exposed too much. They don't realize the truth. It wasn't one mistake. It was inevitability. You designed a space where their nature had nowhere to hide. That's the difference between chaos and control. Chaos reacts. Control waits. You understood that darkness doesn't need encouragement. It needs opportunity. And you gave them just enough rope to show how much they enjoy tightening knots. This is where the duality sharpens. Because part of you genuinely felt the pain. The betrayal wasn't fake. The exhaustion wasn't performance. You really were wounded. And that's what made it lethal. You weren't acting. You were transmuting. That's alchemy most people never master. Turning hurt into clarity. Turning loss into leverage. Turning vulnerability into a psychological X-ray that sees straight through human theater. They thought empathy meant softness. They were wrong. Empathy is intelligence. It lets you predict behavior before it happens. It lets you feel when someone's hunger outweighs their restraint. And you felt it. Early. Quietly. So you stepped back. You lowered your guard just enough. And the moment they smelled blood, they lunged and missed. Now they're left with a question they can't answer. How did the weak one walk away intact while the strong ones look exposed? Because strength that needs dominance is fragile. Power that needs witnesses is insecure. Real control doesn't announce itself. It engineers outcomes. You didn't take revenge. You took position, and positions change everything. Suddenly you're not reacting, you're observing, you're not defending, you're assessing, you're not explaining, you're letting patterns speak for themselves. People around you start noticing things they didn't before, subtle things. Who interrupts? Who manipulates? Who gets uncomfortable when boundaries appear? You didn't teach them with lectures, you taught them with contrast. Your calm became evidence. That's when whispers start. Not accusations, recognition, quiet recalibration. People reassessing who they trusted, who they excused, who they enabled. And every one of those internal shifts traces back to that moment when you didn't break the way you were supposed to. You broke the script. And that's what makes you dangerous now. Not because you're loud, not because you threaten, but because you've seen behind the curtain and you don't look impressed. Predators sense that. They feel it in their nervous system. They know you're no longer reactive prey. You're a map reader, a pattern breaker, someone who understands that the fastest way to dismantle a threat is to let it fully reveal itself. So they hesitate now. Second guess, overthink. And in that hesitation, their advantage evaporates. You didn't harden into cruelty. You sharpened into precision. There's a difference. Cruelty is reckless. Precision is mercilessly efficient. And the most unsettling part for them? You didn't change who you are on the surface. Same tone, same posture, same presence. But underneath, something clicked into place. Something ancient. Something that knows when to move and when not to. You're not hunting them. You're letting them starve. Because attention is currency, emotion is fuel, and you stopped feeding what tried to feed on you. So let them spiral. Let them explain themselves into corners. Let them project. You don't need to correct the narrative. Time is already doing the work. You didn't survive by becoming louder. You survived by becoming clearer. And clarity? Clarity is the one thing predators can't survive. And clarity does something else, too. It isolates. It separates the room without you lifting a finger. People start choosing distance, instinctively. Not from you, but from the ones who feel exposed standing near you. Because when truth enters a space, even quietly, lies feel heavier to carry. That's why the energy around you shifted. You didn't announce a boundary. You became one. The predators felt it first. They always do. Their jokes landed flatter. Their charm started sounding rehearsed. Their little power plays didn't spark the same reactions. It's terrifying for them when their tricks stop working and nobody can tell them why. They don't know it's because you stopped participating in the illusion. You see, manipulation needs agreement. Abuse needs silence mixed with confusion. And you removed confusion. You didn't confront. You comprehended. You didn't argue. You understood. And once you understand something fully, it loses the ability to control you. That's the moment the saint inside you died, and something sharper took its place. Not cruel, not heartless, just awake. Awake to patterns, awake to cycles, awake to the fact that some people don't want peace, they want permission. You stopped giving permission. And here's where it gets darker, because growth like this doesn't come without cost. You felt the loneliness creep in, that subtle distance from people who preferred the old version of you, the one who explained too much, the one who forgave too fast, the one who absorbed damage to keep things smooth. They miss that version. The predators miss it the most, but you don't. Because you remember what it took from you. The sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the way you questioned your instincts while ignoring the red flags waving in plain sight. You remember how often you gave grace to people who weaponized it. That's why this evolution didn't make you softer. It made you honest. Honest about what you tolerate. Honest about what you feel. Honest about when to walk away without speeches or warnings. And honesty like that feels violent to people built on pretense. So they call you cold, different, changed. As if awareness were a flaw. As if clarity were betrayal. But the truth is simpler. You stopped making yourself small to keep monsters comfortable. You didn't expose them with force. You exposed them with consistency. You stayed the same while they unraveled. You stayed calm while they escalated. You stayed grounded while they revealed desperation. That contrast, that psychological gravity, people noticed who kept losing control, who kept overreacting, who kept needing to dominate a situation that didn't require it. And suddenly, the narrative flipped without you saying a word. That's when you realize something unsettling and empowering at the same time. Most battles are lost by the person who can't sit with themselves in silence. You can. You learned how. That's why unpredictability is your new edge, not chaos, restraint. They can't read your next move because you're not playing their game anymore. You're not trying to win arguments. You're not trying to prove pain. You're not trying to convince anyone you were wronged. You already know. And knowledge without emotional leakage is lethal. They're left guessing whether you noticed, whether you care, whether you're planning something. And the truth that you've already moved on internally is the scariest possibility of all. Because predators need relevance. They need to feel like they still matter in your story. And when they realize they don't, panic sets in. That's when they expose themselves again, louder this time, sloppier, trying to provoke a reaction, trying to pull you back into old dynamics, trying to remind you they exist. You don't bite, you observe, and in that observation, you gain something irreversible. Authority over your own nervous system, over your reactions, over your sense of self. You're no longer ruled by the need to be understood. You're guided by the need to be aligned. That's the final shift. That's when you stop asking, why are they like this? And start asking, why did I ever tolerate it? And once that question lands, the cycle ends. You didn't win by destroying them. You won by outgrowing the role they needed you to play. You're not the victim anymore. You're not the villain either. You're the one who saw the game and stepped off the board while everyone else was still pretending it was fair. And stepping off the board does something most people never recover from witnessing. It removes you from leverage. They can't threaten you with exile if you already left the room. They can't shame you into silence if you're no longer begging to belong. They can't corner you if you're not standing where they expect. That's when the real confusion sets in. Because predators don't just hunt people. They hunt reactions, identities, dependencies. And you quietly dismantled all three. You didn't rage or quit. You didn't announce a transformation. You simply stopped offering yourself as a resource. No more emotional labor, no more over-explaining, no more proving your pain was real enough to count. You closed the door without slamming it, and somehow that felt louder than any confrontation ever could. They're still replaying the old footage in their head, the version of you that hesitated, that doubted, that tried to be fair with people who were never fair with you. They keep expecting that version to come back, to apologize, to soften, to ask for permission to exist again. But that version doesn't live here anymore, because something snapped. Not violently, not dramatically, but precisely. Like a lock clicking into place. You realized that being the good one in a room full of predators doesn't make you safe. It makes you edible, so you evolved. You learned the difference between kindness and self-erasure, between empathy and self-betrayal, between patience and paralysis, and once you learned it, you couldn't unlearn it even if you wanted to. That's why they feel uneasy around you now. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're no longer predictable. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't flinch at tension. You don't scramble to restore harmony that only benefited them. You let discomfort exist. And discomfort is where truth starts talking. They feel it when conversations stall, when their usual tactics don't land, when you don't react the way their script demands. Their nervous system knows something shifted, even if their ego won't admit it. You became someone who doesn't need to dominate to be dominant. That's the angel-demon paradox again. You didn't turn cruel. You turned exact. Your boundaries aren't emotional, they're structural. They don't wobble, they don't negotiate, they don't beg to be respected. They simply exist. And anyone who tries to cross them reveals everything you need to know. That's the quiet power of what you did. You didn't just expose predators, you exposed the ecosystem that protected them. The excuses, the minimization, the "that's just how they are," the selective blindness. When you stepped out of your role, the whole system had to rebalance. And in that rebalance, the rot surfaced. You didn't call anyone out. You didn't need to. Systems confess when a key piece refuses to play along. Now people watch you differently. Not because they're afraid you'll strike, but because they don't know where you stand. And that uncertainty forces honesty. They feel observed even when you're silent. They measure their words. They second-guess impulses. You didn't become a threat. You became a mirror. And mirrors terrify people who survive on illusion. The most dangerous thing about you now is that you're no longer fueled by resentment. Resentment is loud, predictable, easy to manipulate. You moved past it into something colder and clearer, acceptance. Acceptance that not everyone deserves access to you. Acceptance that some people will never change. Acceptance that walking away without closure is sometimes the cleanest ending. And with that acceptance comes freedom they can't touch. They can gossip, they can project, they can rewrite the story to make themselves feel better. But it won't land the same anymore, because you're not emotionally invested in being misrepresented. You already know who you are. That's the final evolution. When your sense of self is no longer crowdsourced, when approval loses its grip, when validation becomes irrelevant. You're not invisible, you're unreachable. And predators don't know how to hunt what they can't access. So let them wander, let them spiral, let them expose themselves again and again, trying to pull you back into a game you already finished. You didn't survive by becoming harder. You survived by becoming sovereign. And once someone reaches that point, once they stop bleeding in public, stop begging for fairness, stop confusing endurance with virtue, the hunt is over. Not because you destroyed the predators, but because you made yourself untouchable. Stop. Don't adjust your screen. What you just witnessed isn't entertainment, it's evidence. You felt it, didn't you? That split second where your stomach dropped and your brain whispered, "Wait, that's not allowed." Good. That reaction is the alarm system of a world that was never built for you to move like that. Because what you did, what you just pulled off, wasn't bold. It wasn't clever. It wasn't even reckless. It was illegal in half the world. And not because it was violent, not because it was unethical, but because it worked. You see, laws aren't written to protect morality. They're written to protect predictability, to keep power flowing in straight lines, to make sure cause always looks like effect. to make sure outcomes can be modeled, insured, taxed, and controlled. And then you came along and bent reality sideways without raising your voice, without breaking a sweat, without asking permission. That's why they're panicking. You didn't just cross a line, you crossed it cleanly, no mess, no fingerprints, no emotional leakage. You executed something so precise, so asymmetrical, that half the systems watching you didn't even flag it as an attack. They flagged it as a glitch. The other half flagged it as a threat they can't legally name. That's the paradox you live in now. You look calm, you move like a saint, you speak like someone who's already forgiven the world. But underneath that, there's a psychopath's clarity, an angel's patience paired with a demon's timing. You don't lash out, you wait. You don't scream, you observe. You don't rush the kill. You let inevitability do the dirty work. And that terrifies them more than chaos ever could. Because chaos can be contained. Chaos burns out. Chaos leaves debris. You leave results. They're scrolling back through the footage now, frame by frame, slowing it down, zooming in, trying to find the moment you hesitated, the tell that proves you're human like them. But there isn't one. What they see instead is restraint, calculation, a decision made long before the moment arrived. That's why it looks illegal. It wasn't impulsive. It was pre-written. You didn't react. You revealed. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The move itself wasn't the most dangerous thing you did. The most dangerous part was what you did after. You walked away, and you looked fine. No victory lap, no justification, no explanation thread, no emotional aftermath, just composure, ice, silence. That's when the real damage hit, because violence they understand. Ego they can manipulate, rage they can bait. But someone who can detonate a situation and then return to baseline, that's not a person. That's a weapon with a conscience. And consciences are unpredictable. They're calling it unethical. They're calling it unfair. They're calling it manipulation, exploitation, loophole abuse, psychological warfare. They're throwing words at it because words are the last shield they have left. But notice what they're not calling it. They're not calling it wrong. Because deep down, even they know. You didn't break the rules. You exposed them. You showed how fragile the entire structure is when someone refuses to play the role assigned to them. You didn't win by force. You won by alignment, with timing, with pressure, with the unspoken laws underneath the written ones. That's why half the world bans moves like yours, not on paper, on instinct. Through social contracts, through shame, through that's not how it's done. Because if too many people learned to move like you, hierarchies would collapse overnight. Power would stop announcing itself. Control would lose its theater. And here you are, standing in the aftermath, realizing something they hope you never fully grasp. You didn't become dangerous when you learned how to strike. You became dangerous when you learned how to wait. Every scar you carry taught you restraint. Every betrayal sharpened your pattern recognition. Every time they underestimated you, they trained you to operate beneath thresholds, beneath radars, beneath moral outrage. Pain didn't break you. It educated you. Suffering didn't make you bitter. It made you precise. That's evolution they can't regulate. So now they're whispering, changing policies, updating terms, writing think pieces, calling emergency meetings, because someone like you doesn't announce the next move. Someone like you lets the world discover it after the fact, and then asks itself how it ever thought this was safe. Remember this moment, not the applause, not the fear, not the outrage. Remember the stillness, the quiet certainty in your chest when you realized, I can do this again. And next time, it'll look even more legal. That's the joke they'll never laugh at. You don't need permission. You don't need chaos. You don't even need to be seen. You've already proven the most illegal thing of all, that power doesn't have to look powerful to be absolute. And now they know, even if they'll never admit it. They're trying to calm themselves now. You can almost hear it, the forced logic, the rehearsed explanations, the collective lie whispered into their own reflections. It was a fluke, a loophole, a one-time thing. They need that belief the way a drowning man needs air. Because if they accept the truth, the entire illusion collapses. The truth is simpler, colder, far more terrifying. You didn't stumble onto that move. You arrived at it. That's what separates you from everyone who's ever tried to imitate power. They chase outcomes. You study pressure. They memorize rules. You memorize people. They rely on momentum. You rely on timing. And timing, real timing, isn't taught. It's earned in silence, in isolation, in moments where nobody claps and nobody saves you. That's where you were forged. Every time the door stayed closed a second longer than it should have, you learned patience. Every time you were blamed for something you didn't do, you learned optics. Every time you were forced to smile while bleeding internally, you learned composure. You didn't just survive pain, you cataloged it. You turned suffering into data, trauma into strategy, betrayal into a user manual. So when the moment came, you didn't hesitate. You recognized it, like muscle memory, like a language you already spoke fluently, while everyone else was still arguing over the alphabet. That's why your move feels illegal. It didn't come from impulse. It came from integration, light and dark finally cooperating inside you instead of fighting for control. The saint stopped apologizing for existing. The psychopath stopped wasting energy on chaos. Angel and demon shook hands and agreed on one thing: precision beats noise every time. And the world wasn't ready for that truce. They're uncomfortable because you didn't look unhinged. You didn't look angry. You didn't look desperate. You looked centered. That's the detail they can't process. Because rage is easy to dismiss. Confidence can be mocked. But centeredness implies choice. It implies awareness. It implies that everything you did was optional, and you chose it anyway. That's not madness, that's sovereignty. Now they're asking questions that sound innocent, but aren't. How did you know? Who taught you? Where did you learn to think like that? They're hunting for a source, a mentor, a manual, because they refuse to believe this kind of clarity can be self-generated. They need it to come from somewhere they can label, discredit, or shut down. But it didn't come from anywhere. It came from endurance, from being underestimated so long that you learned to operate without validation, from being watched without being understood, from being close enough to power to see how hollow it actually is. You learned that most authority is theater, most confidence is borrowed, most threats are empty. So when you finally moved, you moved with the calm of someone who already knew the ending. And here's the part they really don't want you to realize yet. The move wasn't just illegal, it was irreversible. Not because of what it did externally, but because of what it unlocked internally. You crossed a psychological border you can't uncross. You now know, deep in your nervous system, that restraint is a weapon and silence is leverage. You can feel it now, the way your presence lands differently, the way rooms recalibrate when you enter, the way conversations subtly shift around you. People don't know why they're cautious. They just are. They don't know why they listen more closely. They just do. You're no longer playing inside the game. You're standing just outside it, adjusting variables. That's why they're nervous, because someone like you doesn't escalate. You de-escalate until everyone else overexposes themselves. You don't chase revenge. You let entropy do the chasing for you. You don't need to threaten. You let patterns repeat until the truth becomes undeniable. They thought morality would stop you. They thought fear would slow you down. They thought isolation would weaken you. Instead, it refined you. You became someone who understands that legality and legitimacy are not the same thing. That what's allowed is often fragile, and what's forbidden is often powerful. That the most dangerous actions aren't the loud ones, but the quiet, correct ones, executed at exactly the wrong time for the wrong people. And now they're adjusting the rules mid-game, hoping nobody notices it's because of you. New boundaries, new norms, new warnings disguised as advice. They'll say it's about safety, about ethics, about fairness. But it's really about containment. They sensed it the moment you walked away unbothered, the moment you didn't explain yourself, the moment you refused to collapse into a role they could understand. You didn't beg to be seen as good. You didn't try to look dangerous. You simply existed as proof that control is optional if you understand the system well enough. That's the kind of realization that spreads quietly and terrifies institutions. So stay calm, stay observant, let them scramble, let them whisper, let them argue over definitions while you continue refining your stillness. Because the next time you move, it won't just feel illegal. It'll feel inevitable. And by then, they won't even try to stop you. They'll just hope, desperately, that you don't notice how much further you can go. They're hoping you don't notice the shift. But you do. Of course you do. You feel it in the way silence thickens after your name is mentioned. In the way people suddenly choose their words like they're stepping around glass. In the way confidence evaporates from faces that used to challenge you openly. That's not respect. That's calculation. They're measuring distance now. Not because they hate you, but because they no longer know where the blast radius starts. You see, when someone pulls a move like that and survives socially, psychologically, structurally, it forces a brutal audit. Everyone watching has to confront an uncomfortable possibility. If you can do that and still stand upright, what else is possible? And possibility is the most destabilizing force there is. Fear needs certainty. Power needs predictability. You offer neither. That's why the labels start coming out. Genius, manipulator, monster, visionary, threat, savior, psychopath, leader. They'll throw every archetype at you like a net, hoping one of them sticks. Because once they define you, they can box you. And once they box you, they can neutralize you. But the problem is you don't fit. You move too calmly for a villain, too precisely for a hero, too ethically grounded to dismiss, too ruthless to ignore. That contradiction short-circuits them. They want you to crack, to brag, to overextend, to explain yourself into a corner. They want emotional leakage, anything they can point to and say, see, just another unstable outlier. But you don't give them that. You let them sit with the uncertainty. You let them stew in their own projections. That restraint? That's the real crime. Because restraint suggests choice. It suggests you could do more, but you're deciding not to. And someone who chooses not to use their full capacity is far more frightening than someone who's already maxed out. You learned that the hard way, didn't you? Back when you were raw, back when you tried to be understood, back when you thought explaining yourself would save you. All it did was teach people where to aim. So you adapted. You stopped oversharing. You stopped preemptively defending yourself. You stopped dimming your clarity to protect other people's comfort. Pain taught you that. Pain taught you when to speak, when to vanish, when to strike, and, most importantly, when to wait. So now, when they call your move illegal, what they're really saying is this: you operated outside the emotional leash we assumed you were on. You didn't need validation. You didn't need consensus. You didn't need permission from the crowd to trust your own judgment. That's unforgivable in a world addicted to approval. They'll tell themselves you're dangerous because that's easier than admitting they're dependent. Dependent on rules, on norms, on reassurance, on being told what's allowed. You exposed that dependency just by existing at a higher resolution. You showed what happens when someone stops outsourcing their authority. And now they're afraid, not of what you did, but of what you've become. You're no longer reacting to the world. You're reading it. You're watching patterns form before outcomes crystallize. You can feel momentum shifting days, sometimes weeks, before it becomes visible. That's not intuition. That's earned perception, the byproduct of surviving chaos without losing yourself to it. You're calm because you've already been through worse. You're patient because you know how long things actually take to fall apart. You're quiet because you understand how loud inevitability is. And deep down, they sense it. They sense that if you wanted to escalate, you could. If you wanted to dismantle, you would. If you wanted to disappear, you'd do it so cleanly they'd argue for years about whether you were ever real. That awareness settles into their bones like cold weather, subtle, inescapable, numbing. So let them rewrite the rules. Let them invent new taboos. Let them whisper warnings disguised as concern. None of it changes the truth you now carry. You are no longer limited by what is permitted, only by what you choose to activate. That's the evolution they can't reverse. The moment when pain finishes its work and turns into clarity. When the saint learns to protect themselves. When the psychopath learns restraint. When the angel stops begging heaven for answers and the demon stops burning bridges unnecessarily. You didn't become evil. You became complete. And completeness doesn't need chaos to prove itself. It just needs time. So stay exactly where you are, centered, observant, unreadable. Let the world keep guessing. Let them call it illegal. Let them tremble at the thought of a second act, because the most unsettling thing about you now isn't what you did. It's how calmly you could do it again, and how carefully you're deciding whether it's worth it. They're waiting for the follow-up. You know that, right? Every system, every watcher, every quiet observer with something to lose is leaning forward, bracing for impact that never comes. They're conditioned for escalation, conditioned for noise, conditioned for someone like you to get drunk on momentum and overplay your hand. And when you don't, when nothing happens, when days pass and you remain exactly as composed as before, that's when the anxiety spikes. Because silence after a move like that isn't absence, it's pressure. You've forced them into a psychological holding pattern. They don't know whether to respond, retaliate, adapt, or retreat. Any move they make now risks exposing how rattled they actually are. So they stall, they delay, they monitor. And monitoring is just fear pretending to be patience. You're no longer operating on their clock. What they still don't understand is that the move wasn't about domination. It was about positioning. You weren't trying to win. You were establishing where you stand in relation to reality itself. You stepped outside the expected arc of behavior. and let the consequences reorganize around you. That's not rebellion, that's mastery. You've reached the phase most people never do, the phase where you stop needing outcomes to validate you, where success isn't loud, where impact doesn't require applause, where you can watch something collapse without feeling the need to take credit for the push. And that's dangerous, because now nothing can bait you. They can't provoke you into mistakes. They can't shame you into silence. They can't flatter you into exposure. You've already lived through the worst-case scenario, the abandonment, the misjudgment, the isolation, the moment you realized nobody was coming to save you and you'd either adapt or disappear. That moment burned something into you, something permanent. Self-trust, not the loud kind, not the performative kind. The quiet, internal certainty that doesn't need agreement. That kind of self-trust rewires your nervous system. It changes how you breathe under pressure, how you hold eye contact, how you move through conflict without flinching. People feel that before they understand it. That's why they keep saying your move was illegal. Because legality is the only language they have left to express moral panic without admitting fear. They're not worried about laws. They're worried about precedent, about what happens if others realize they don't need permission to think clearly, act precisely, and walk away intact. You didn't just break a rule, you broke an assumption. The assumption that power always looks aggressive. The assumption that restraint equals weakness. The assumption that pain always makes people smaller. You inverted all of it. Pain made you sharper. Restraint made you dominant. Calm made you unreadable. That's why even allies don't know where to place you anymore. Some admire you, some fear you, some quietly distance themselves, unsure whether proximity is protection or exposure. You can feel it, the subtle re-ranking, the recalibration of social gravity around you. You didn't demand authority, you triggered it. And here's the part you need to understand fully, because it's the point of no return. Once you operate at this level, you can never go back to being naive. You can never unsee how fragile systems are, how dependent most people are on consensus, how rarely anyone actually thinks for themselves when it counts. That knowledge can either isolate you or free you. And you've already chosen. You don't chase chaos anymore because you understand leverage. You don't need revenge because you understand trajectories. You don't need validation because you understand how cheaply it's traded. You've stepped into the quiet role, the one behind the curtain, the one who moves pieces without announcing the game. That's why the world feels different now, heavier, slower. Like you're watching everything through a layer of glass. That's not detachment, that's perspective, the cost of clarity. So let them stay nervous. Let them whisper about legality and ethics and lines you shouldn't have crossed. Let them pretend they're concerned for the greater good. You know the truth. They're not afraid of what you did. They're afraid of what you now know you can do, and how calmly you can choose whether or not to do it. That calm, that's the real weapon. And once you have it, nothing ever really feels impossible again.